Something unusual is happening in the AI industry right now. Anthropic is confidentially filed for an IPO, and reports suggest OpenAI may not be far behind. Under normal circumstances, that wouldn't be surprising. Except, these are not your average cash-strapped startups. Anthropic's valuation recently cleared a staggering $965 billion, making it the most valuable AI company in the world, while OpenAI hovers in the hundreds of billions. Together, these two giants are chasing a combined market value approaching $2 trillion, which raises an interesting question. If some of the most valuable private companies in the world already have access to seemingly unlimited funding, why do they still need Wall Street? Early venture investors and employees who have been locked in for years are demanding real liquidity to cash out. But the bigger, more pressing reason is that much of their current private funding isn't actual cash at all. It is largely composed of cloud compute credits provided by tech giants like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. To survive the next phase of the AI race, these startups need real liquid, cold, hard cash. To understand why, we need to understand what AI has become. For years, we have thought of AI as a software story. Better models, smarter chatbots, more capable assistants. But increasingly, AI is starting to look less like software and more like infrastructure. And that distinction matters because software and infrastructure are fundamentally different businesses. Traditional software is one of the most attractive business models ever created, historically generating extraordinary gross margins of 80 to 90%. You build a product once and then distribute it to millions of users at relatively low incremental cost. AI, however, works differently, dragging margins down to the 50 to 60% range because of variable computing overhead. Every prompt costs money. Every image generated costs money. Every AI agent running in the background consumes immense computing resources. As models become more capable and adoption increases, the cost of serving users rises alongside demand. In other words, success itself creates additional punishing infrastructure requirements. This shift becomes obvious when you look at where the money is going. When you add up the massive capital expenditure plans for Amazon at $200 billion, Microsoft and Alphabet at $190 billion each, and Meta at $145 billion, the collective pool approaches nearly $750 billion in a single year. That is an extraordinary amount of capital. And importantly, it is not being spent on advertising campaigns or acquisitions. It is being spent on the physical bottleneck underneath the software. Data centers, GPUs, networking equipment, massive power grids, and cooling systems. Compute itself has become a scarce strategic resource. The more successful these products become, the more infrastructure they require, and the more capital companies need to keep expanding. But as these companies rush toward the public markets, a growing chorus of skeptics is warning that this massive capital expenditure hides a structural rot. Prominent tech critics like Ed Zitron have fiercely bashed the upcoming IPOs, arguing that OpenAI and Anthropic are fundamentally loss-making enterprises running on a broken business model. According to Zitron's analysis, infrastructure spending alone has spiraled into the tens of billions of dollars, creating a burn rate that no amount of retail subscription growth can offset. Critics contend that these companies aren't going public because they're mature. They're going public because they are burning through cash at a historical rate and have exhausted the patience of private venture capital. In this view, the rush to Wall Street looks less like a victory lap and more like a desperate exit strategy to unload a massive financial bubble onto retail investors before the hype completely collapses. Yet, despite these massive losses, investors are assigning extraordinary values to companies like OpenAI and Anthropic. Now, you must understand that these valuations are not based on what these businesses are today. They're based on what investors believe these businesses could become. The assumption embedded within these valuations is that AI will eventually become a foundational layer of the global economy in much the same way that cloud computing, smartphones, and the internet itself became foundational technologies. The challenge is that nobody yet knows exactly where the economics of AI will settle. The market has already decided that AI is important. What it has not yet decided is who will ultimately capture the value. Will it be the model providers like OpenAI and Anthropic? Will it be infrastructure providers like NVIDIA? Will it be cloud companies such as Microsoft, Google, and Amazon? Or will AI become increasingly commoditized, putting pressure on margins across the ecosystem? These questions remain unanswered, and yet investors are already placing some of the largest bets in technology history. Now, this is where SpaceX provides an incredible contrast. Like OpenAI and Anthropic, SpaceX is chasing its own blockbuster IPO at a historic multi-trillion-dollar valuation. But its path into the AI space looks entirely different. SpaceX didn't try to build the smartest consumer chatbot to compete with Silicon Valley. Instead, following its massive corporate merger with Elon Musk's xAI, SpaceX effectively became the physical superpower of the AI industry. By inheriting xAI's assets, SpaceX took control of the legendary Colossus supercomputer cluster in Memphis, Tennessee, which is the largest concentrated footprint of NVIDIA GPUs on the planet. What makes this a masterclass in business strategy is that SpaceX is now leveraging this physical infrastructure to act as a landlord to its direct rivals. In its recent IPO filings, SpaceX revealed jaw-dropping compute leasing deals that have completely reshaped the tech landscape. Anthropic is paying SpaceX a massive $1.25 billion a month to lease the majority of the Colossus facility to train its Claude models. Google also signed a contract to pay SpaceX $920 million a month to rent access to 110,000 GPUs because its own data centers couldn't keep pace with surging demand. Combined, these contracts alone are generating an annualized revenue run rate of $26 billion for SpaceX before it even rings the opening bell on Wall Street. Think about what that means. OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google are viewed as the stars of the revolution because they build the software we interact with. But underneath every chatbot and AI agent sits an unforgiving layer of infrastructure: data centers, power systems, cooling, and raw compute. In many ways, this perfectly mirrors earlier technology booms. During a gold rush, the biggest fortunes are rarely made by the miners risking it all looking for gold. They are made by the companies selling the picks, shovels, and tools that everyone else depends on. While frontier AI companies burn through cash trying to build the smartest model, SpaceX has positioned itself to profit from the demand generated by all of them, making money regardless of which AI model ultimately wins. With AI companies, the long-term revenue picture is still evolving. Revenues are growing rapidly, enterprise adoption is accelerating, and demand remains strong. But so are infrastructure costs. Every improvement in capability requires exponentially more investment in compute, data centers, and energy. That dynamic makes these upcoming IPOs particularly significant because they are not simply public listings. In fact, they will become the first major transparent test of whether the economics of frontier AI can eventually support the valuations being assigned to these companies, or if the critics are right about the mounting losses. Ultimately, Wall Street is about to answer a question that Silicon Valley has largely postponed. Not whether AI works. We already know it works. The real question is whether AI can generate enough economic value to justify the largest infrastructure build-out and capital deployment the technology industry has ever seen. Because if companies valued at hundreds of billions of dollars are still coming back to the market for more capital, then perhaps the defining challenge of the AI era is no longer building intelligence. Perhaps it is financing it. And that may turn out to be the most important AI story of all. If you found this video insightful and want to stay ahead of the deeply complex macro shifts shaping the future of technology, make sure to subscribe to Tech Brew with Vandana Nair. Let me know your thoughts on this high-stakes IPO race in the comments section below, and I'll see you in the next brew.